ABC. We're starting simple. If the algorithm is artificial, that means that it's probably not as smart as real life people. Let's start with that. People outside are smarter than the algorithm. If Joshua Elijah Ford is back again talking ABCs, one, two, three. Give you that uno, dos, tres. Right there. We're logging in. WMI. WMI. It sounds like I'm a winners club no matter what I do already. Shout out to the all of you. That's communication. WMI. Of course I am. Put a W in the comment. It's the winners club. Okay, so let's break it down. This is gonna be fun, but it's just like class. It's gonna be college level class or simpler, but also with wordplay that can be read in between the gaps. But professionalism is peace, love, happiness. So that means in America or most places, we love peace, love, happiness. Why? Because then that is positive. Okay, so we're starting basic. Positive is better than negative. We're gonna have to say that. Although things can be positive or negative in different fields, different subjects in school, positive most of the time with emotions and with peace, love, and happiness, that's a beautiful thing. Although, yes, there is negative, but that's also in different fields where, like, if your health, something happens to your health, you want to get it fixed. You want to have people that you can be peaceful with, where then your health comes back right away because we want to maintain. So, positive is better than negative sometimes, but all of that, there's many different ways to look at that. Many different ways to look at something means that there is many variables. A variable means that there is more than one way to look at something. So if you say look at the sun, sometimes they think it's the thing in the sky, the bright thing. Sometimes they think it's the firstborn child. That's how simple it is. But there's different ways to look at it. So the algorithm is supposed to be positive. That means like peace, love, happiness, where your energy gets more motivated than it is to feel drained, or that it feels like you're making more money that you can at least pay for where you live. So this is the weird thing, right? Peace, love, happiness, and positive almost means that something kind of has to make sense. So if something kind of has to make sense, sometimes that means mathematically that the equation, I don't know. So then you get to math, right? Which is part of the algorithm. But the algorithm is still supposed to be more smart than people because why? There's so people are smarter in general, but why would the algorithm also help somebody in a peaceful, loving, positive way? Because in business, right, that would help somebody. That would mean that the algorithm knows many ways to help somebody more than so in person. If you meet somebody with an idea, they might have all the ideas, but the algorithm, it might look at one thing differently than the group of 10 people. The algorithm might think like 1,000 people, but sometimes that's where things get interesting. So the algorithm thinking like 1,000 people, does not mean that's not good. 10 people can even think better than the algorithm, depending on what you're really talking about. Even one person could think better than the algorithm. But the algorithm is beautiful and we have to continue to have it in a positive way so then it equals out. So on world media innovations, world music innovations, we're only talking about the algorithm right now because we don't like to say certain things because that sometimes feels like an ego. But if I work for or went to school with Google, which bought YouTube, then sometimes I would like the algorithm to make sense, which would then equal to a positive experience or would equal to a net plus in money, which would mean that it would generate money for you versus then if you buy the internet, the phone, upload the videos, work, make money, and then you put something on there and it doesn't do anything, that means the algorithm is not doing math in a positive way. That means the algorithm is just kind of crazy. Like, or there's somebody behind it not making the math equal to a plus or positive or something, peace, love, happiness. That means there's something behind it that's generating the equations mathematically to have something negative versus something positive, which means that if something, for example, right, sprays into somebody's face and they go like this, it almost might seem funny, but that's not positive. They lost their drink. Somebody cameraed it that wasn't them when they spilled it. And how is that gonna add value to anything else? That probably wouldn't be as positive. So that doesn't mean that it's bad though. Is a piece of content, right? But that then means that mathematically, something that is not that could be of benefit. So, like if I jump on here and I work or get Google certified, and then I can talk about Google in different ways, I wouldn't feel the need to go work there if I positively upload more videos that would show that the thing flying in somebody's face is not as positive as me being on live and not doing that. So if I upload many videos, it doesn't need to compare, right? But it almost could, but there still has to be enough money, right? So Google and YouTube in a positive way have to have enough money. So Google and YouTube have to have enough money from the government. So Google and YouTube are both businesses. Sometimes they say they're a LLC still. Sometimes they say they're a corporation. It kind of is in California. That's the West Coast, right? That's a positive experience because once you buy a phone for the first time, you get to go onto YouTube a lot of the time. That's where sometimes you can learn in a positive way. You could find out what a language means. You could find out what kind of education you might need or might get, or where you're located or who you want to have a positive motivation from. So if this is the Winners Club and we're talking about the algorithm, sometimes then we would then feel like if Google and YouTube have enough funding from the government, which means like the Federal Reserve pressing enough money from Congress to say, here, we're gonna give Google and YouTube 100 trillion. No, it has to be even more than 100 trillion. So now we kind of get weird with the numbers, right? We kind of get weird because then we have to say that, okay, the United States is worth more than 100 trillion. Google and YouTube alone would have to have, like, we're just giving rough examples. There has to be some numbers out there, even in Congress. I cannot be younger than everybody else that works at YouTube, right? But Congress will have to have a amount of capital where then they can have a positive experience for the algorithm to work in favor of many different variables. It could be mathematically adding up into a positive experience, especially if one creator does this in many different countries. So if my show or World Music Innovations produces a lot of music is and especially talks about it positively, it doesn't need to be positive music. So that's the other thing too, right? Music in general, creating something or buying something would have to also have value for the algorithm to work. So then it's like economics in the United States would have to have economics work for people and jobs to be able to have a positive experience and have internet, have housing, have people who even love to build get enough pay. This is Congress, reallocating the budget in the United States, even having enough to figure it out in the United States and still give to other countries, right? This is how you have a positive experience, but you have to give enough in the United States that you cannot see people not having a positive experience, especially if they pay for internet, this and that, and they get a job and they finally get to have a phone. If they post on YouTube, even one video should be able to generate right away instead of waiting for some kind of number that keeps changing mathematically. That even if somebody like Gary V has 1,000 employees, how he how he about to make enough money ever if he has 1,000 employees compared to if Joshua Elijah Ford doesn't have 1,000 employees? That means I have so much more money, but even the algorithm would have to pay me enough that then I could have one employee, right? So then I could then have a positive experience, or I could even have enough money to then pay my rent if I already pay my rent. So if I already pay my rent, if I already pay my bills, and I pay my internet and I finally buy a brand new phone, if I upload 400 videos, that should be positive for the algorithm, especially then if I attach all the videos with music. So then if I buy a drum machine, if I buy microphones, if I buy an entire studio to then make theme music to the entire YouTube channel. So this is when the algorithm would have to start thinking like this is like probably people been saying one of ones out here. I don't yes and no at the same time. If they've been saying Jermaine Dupri, we gotta give him the ball, right? Flowers are still due where it is. That's where the math is, right? You don't discredit people who are older, but you don't then discredit people who are younger either. But if I go onto YouTube and I make my channel that big, and then I buy an entire studio, all money in, then I go outside and the bro says, "Bro, you look like you spent the whole bag." He said, "You look like you city popped the whole thing on your chain." I say, "I have no cash." That means as a stylist, I increase my value as a stylist, right? This is when style, Coconut Kingdom, and all of that comes into play because the gold is equivalent to what they then see. This is why there was, you know, gold gold held worked, right? So back in the day, in economics too, there was a gold standard, right? But then something happened where things got rough. But then, so if you're a stylist and you increase your value like this Coconut Kingdom Classic, wearing True Religions, right? Then as a one-on-one, if I was in favor with the algorithm and the algorithm was a net plus positive experience, not only would Jermaine Dupri as one of the producers be one of the best, right? You gotta give credit where it's due. Bro has all the new NPCs. is one of the best producers even on EYL, but you cannot discredit Coast, right? So if I had to pass the alley oop to myself, not like I want to like Tracy McGrady, but if I had to throw it off the glass and then I produce all the music and become one of the biggest YouTubers, by default, after I pay my rent, after I produce all the music, after I spend 100 bands on the style, after I run around the city and city pop the whole thing, 8 minutes, by default, I would automatically, have the algorithm working in favor, but it would kind of also, it wouldn't discredit people who are older because just by being somebody who's older. We don't like to say that as in age, but somebody who already did more work. You always have to credit Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dr. J, right? So the algorithm has to, Albert Einstein, it has to be in favor of individuals. Just because somebody's not on YouTube, that doesn't even discredit the person not on YouTube. But if you buy a phone and you log in, you should be able to take care of your mom where she don't mind it at all. She would think like, oh, one video. Now we're eating dinner tonight. That would mean the algorithm is even working in favor of your family. That would be a beautiful thing, right? Especially if I then showed the credit where it was due in many different ways. So it could be showing mathematical equations just by word examples. We don't like to sound over smart. That's an ego. But then we have to jump on our algorithm because if I don't have money to pay for the studio, I already have my mom moaning and groaning in the back. We want the people positive in our family, right? So the algorithm would provide me enough money that I don't need to hear that. That would be a positive experience. That would be more fun if the algorithm then people who provide value to the community even then paid more than EBT because this would then be communication at the highest level, right? Nobody in school hardly is elementary has a cell phone unless the kid already was 1 years old and that doesn't even make sense for the algorithm to understand that. Nobody is 1 years old working at the telecom communications, setting up accounts and then on YouTube as a baby. That wouldn't even make sense. But then somebody who's actually, in favor, who works, especially then communicates at different levels, that doesn't mean the baby cannot be exclusively genius smart, right? There's a infant, not not the rapper. Shout out to the, this is WMI. Shout out to all everybody. We don't have to hear yelling in the background, but that's how mathematics would work for the equation to be in favor of people who log in. It wouldn't take 10 billion minutes, especially then if you see the level of value you're providing to YouTube and the algorithm. That means world music innovations, world media innovations. When we log in and we talk about how the algorithm can improve and we chop up the videos, this will be a beautiful benefit to then even have people at Google, YouTube, the computer scientists, computer data analytics, everybody. There's a lot of people smarter than me, but I like to communicate it. So there's different fields in each corporation. I like to speak about it and then kind of have the message get passed down the line. So sometimes somebody can find the things that need to be changed. They can talk about it and then have the algorithm create a funnel where people who then understand or work can make these fixes. So big shout out to World Music Innovations, World Media Innovations. Go download the music on Apple Music, Spotify, WMIRecords.com, JoshForMusic.com. And we gotta keep doing it big in the city. It's the Winners Club. But we cannot have drama. Song number one is no drama. Why would the police try to betray somebody who's online on YouTube instead of work in their favor, and then have somebody's parent have PTSD?